Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom.
This is the State of Affairs, and I'm Akshay.
So, do you think it would be safe to say that in times of grave national crisis, the media in our country often bungles up its responsibility towards the nation?
Media is more like treating politics and public events as spectator sport. It's like a 2020 cricket match, and we're all merely the spectators. Media has ignored the notion that politics is about us and our lives. It's not about who wins and who loses. It's about what happens after the election. Now, there's not a single discussion or debate in Indian newspapers, Indian media, or even social media, any meaningful debate on this issue, which is central to India's future. It's all about who wins, who loses. It's about a power struggle.
So, how do you assess the media's role in the anti-farm laws protests of 2000?
We were more bothered about the romance of the protest, the ways of protest, how innovative, how romantic they are. Not how beautifully the people hoisted a flag, or stood and marched, or braved the winter cold, or something else.
So, do you think it would be safe to say that in times of grave national crisis, the media in our country often bungles up its responsibility towards the nation?
I would amend that statement. In times of real national peril, China's invasion of India, India-Pakistan crisis, or a natural disaster affecting a large part of a geography, I think the media, like the rest of society, is completely united and there is a sense of purpose. But where the nature of crisis is not so evident, it's a creeping crisis. I think media is completely oblivious of what is happening. The political crisis of India, for instance. Money is now paving way to political power. Increasingly now in most parts of India, large amounts of money and the expenditure, they have become determinants of electoral outcome. They become necessary and often sufficient condition. And political power in turn is giving you opportunity to make money independent of your economic activity or ability to compete. It's a very dangerous thing. Now, much of the media discussion on politics is about who will win, who will lose, who will forge alliance with whom, but not about the fundamental nature of the crisis in our politics. For instance, take education. Just this week, Economist, arguably one of the greatest news magazines of the world, has written a story about Indian education. They said the greatest challenge facing India, when India wants to really achieve global prominence in terms of economic growth, very much like China has accomplished in the last 30, 40 years, the single biggest obstacle to Indian aspirations and economic growth is the quality of education. Our education is substandard. Now, there's not a single discussion or debate in Indian newspapers, Indian media, or even social media, any meaningful debate on this issue, which is central to India's future. Most of the discussion or debate are about peripheral things or polarizing things. We are discussing uniform civil code. I have no quarrel. But by an order of magnitude, whether every single child of India is getting quality education to fulfill their potential, or to become an effective citizen, or to ensure harmony in society, and to eliminate injustice on account of circumstances of birth, or to engineer economic growth and job creation. This is the most incredible thing. So, in that sense, media is more like treating politics and public events as spectator sport. It's like a 2020 cricket match, and we're all merely the spectators. Media has ignored the notion that politics is about us and our lives. It's not about who wins and who loses. It's about what happens after the election. That is completely ignored or mostly ignored. It's all about who wins, who loses. It's about a power struggle. And that's, of course, very exciting anywhere in the world. Who will win, who will lose, which side, who is on which side is very exciting. But it's irrelevant in the most part. To that extent, I think media has been a part of the problem in the country.
So how do you assess the media's role in the anti-farm laws protests of 2021?
In the large part, I think it was extremely detrimental to the country's interests. We were more bothered about the romance of the protest, the ways of protest, how innovative, how romantic they are. We never bothered about the content of the issue on which the protests are held, and never about the merits and demerits of the issue. What matters ultimately is, are the farm laws ultimately good for agricultural economy of India and the farmers? Not how beautifully the people hoisted a flag or stood and marched or braved the winter cold or something else. And I have no doubt about it, I said publicly repeatedly. The 3 farm laws, while they are not sufficient to improve the lot of the farmers or the agricultural sector, they are vital. One law attempted to take away the government's power to regulate and control and stifle freedom of the farmers and traders. Absolutely necessary is the government's license, permit, control law that did immense damage to agriculture. Another law attempted to inject some degree of competition while selling. Instead of depending on a monopoly markets, they created a provision for multiple players to come and buy. And if more people try and buy my product, as a producer, I am a beneficiary because they are competing. Therefore, the price is likely to go up, not down. And the third law attempted to give stability to very volatile pricing. If I know what is next year's crop is going to cost, the price I'm going to get, then I can make informed decision. Whereas today, tomato, right now at this point of time, 100 rupees a kg, the whole nation is agog about that. I can guarantee you 3 months down the line, tomato will be at 50 paise a kg and none of us is bothered. It's an absurd way of running an agricultural economy. Nowhere in the world does it happen outside the Indian subcontinent. And therefore, if there is some kind of a price stability, both for the producer and the consumer, through contract farming, in advance I know what is the price at which it is bought, irrespective of the vagaries of the market demand. What it means is that whenever there is a glut in production and the demand cannot absorb the supply, then it will go for processing. It will give a fillip to processing and other things. Value addition will be there. All 3 laws were resisted. There is absolutely no rational ground to resist them. But the media focused on the romance of it and the politics of it. Because in our country, even if something is good for the country, opposing for opposition's sake is taken as democracy and freedom. It's an absurd thing. The idea of political leaders and political parties is be on the lookout for the collective good of the country. What is rational, what is in public interest, based on evidence and logic and the best practices in the world. Instead, I don't care what you propose, I oppose it. When I come to power, whatever I opposed, I will then propose it. Then you will oppose it. So it's all about you fighting at the cost of the country each time. Now that's a very dangerous thing, and media very definitely played a role in that, which is very sad, very cynical.
So do you think there's any way to incentivize the media to act in the nation's interest in such moments?
I really don't have an answer to that, actually. I don't think anybody in the world has an answer. World over, this debate is going on. How do you promote rational public discourse through media? Because world over, media is facing intense competition from other sources. Newspapers, competition from television channels. Now, newspapers and television channels, competition from social media now. All kinds of competition. Therefore, they're all running scared. Therefore, the first principle is eyeballs or readership. Now, readership and eyeballs are when the news is more crazy, there's more interest. As is famously said, if a dog bites a man, it's not news. If a man bites a dog, it's news. So sensationalizing, provoking prurient interest and curiosity seems to be increasingly seen as necessary for survival of the newspapers and media. Social media, there are no filters. At least newspapers and television, there is some editorial control and some wise people, hopefully, are filtering and figuring out what is right, what is wrong, and they're exercising judgment. Social media, anybody, I may be an idiot, I may be an Einstein, anybody with access to the technology or the phone, and most of the technology today is idiot-proof. Anybody can use them. I can put across my uninformed, foolish, and stupid views, are extremely wise and innovative and thoughtful views equally. And good or bad, the platform is available to all. Obviously, democratization part is good, but unfiltered, unvarnished lies being circulated is certainly not good for society. I don't have an answer. I don't think anybody has an answer. But what we can perhaps do is three things. If the political leadership across the world, not only political leadership, but the elites across the world, if they forge a consensus, that is their job, and figure out what actually matters, and use their lung power, their credibility, their position of authority to influence the bulk of the people, then media will be forced to fall in line. If the political leadership is fighting in a polarized manner without regard to the consequences to the future, then you cannot blame the media. So, to that extent, the elites and the political leadership have a responsibility. In the media also, if at least some elites exercise that discretion, that wisdom, and that restraint required consistently, even if in the short term there is a price to be paid, then again, an example is there which is enduring. But ultimately, it's about us, the people. If we realize what is in our best interest, and if we build pressure, if for instance in India, if our voters and our readers and our viewers worry more about what education is my child getting, why am I forced to spend lakhs of rupees even in school education, and even then I'm getting substandard education? Why is there no access to healthcare and many people are becoming paupers? Why are our public amenities so substandard in this country? And a whole lot of questions. If we focus on what matters to us instead of being spectators in a sport, then I think media will be forced again to pay attention. So I think at various levels, you have to apportion responsibilities. There's no point blaming somebody. We're all in it together.
Thank you, sir. This has been deeply enriching for all of us. I am Akshat, and this is The State of Affairs.